This is the raw footage of an interview conducted with Bernie O'Leary in Painesville, Ohio, the summer before St. Mary's School closed. People of Painesville. And one of the things that we'd really like to know, Bernie, is we'd like to get a sense of what it was like to be in his presence. What kind of, what were your feelings about him? Do you have any stories that you can recall where you interacted with Father Galena?
About Father Galena? Well, in the school itself, I didn't remember about the catechism, but when we got our report cards, Father Galena gave them out, and he sat up in the teacher's desk, and then when he called your name, you went up and he studied your card. And if it was pretty bad, he had you stand there a long time. And then he might say something like, well, Bernie, or maybe you should do better. But he, at that time, there was a comic strip, Barney Google, and he used to call me Barney Google sometimes. But he had a good sense of humor, and he was, I don't know if anybody mentioned all this work he did here, but then he did just about all the work right over in the parish house too. I think they had one woman that was like a bookkeeper, but a lot of times if you stopped there and he answered the door, he would have his visor on, and he wore the visor a lot when he was reading or doing book work. And once when we used to have a lawn fete, and well, I'm getting ahead of that. We had custodians here over the years, but none of them were licensed boiler operators, and I guess they figured they couldn't pass the test. So anyhow, Father Galena took it, and so he was the one here at St. Mary's who was the certified boiler operator. And I don't know about, just trying to think what else. I could tell you about, after we were grown up, I think my youngest brother was in high school, and Father Galena called my mother and asked her if she could come to teach the first grade. And so she came back and taught a couple years, and she had taught school before she'd gotten married. And so her name was Susan, but Father Galena called her Swizz. And I guess that's about all I can think of.
Now, Father Galena seemed to have nicknames he had for you, even for your mom. So he knew you well enough to have nicknames, knew your mom well enough to give her a nickname?
Right. And see, we only lived 2 blocks from St. Mary's, and I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters. And then, of course, my mother and father were married here before Father Galena, or let me see. I'm not sure now if that was before Father Galena came.
He came in 1914.
Oh, no, he was here then. Well, then he must have married them, yeah. So, and my father even, after my father had retired, Father Galena called him. I guess the custodian had quit, and he called my dad to fill in for him. And it happened to be in the winter, and there were 3 boilers to take care of, and My dad wasn't too big of a guy. I know it was hard work for him. It was like making sure the stokers were working and pulling the clinkers out. But my father, one of the things he enjoyed about working at that time was how much the nuns appreciated any little thing you did for them. And the nuns really never had much, and if you could repair something for them or paint something, they really appreciated it.
Was Painesville a poor town or a rich town then?
Probably now we're a poorer town, yeah.
What was the big employer when you were growing up here?
Diamond Alkali.
Is that right?
I worked there, yeah. At that time, Diamond Alkali and the Rayon were the biggest, and then maybe co-manufacturing.
Yeah.
I guess now Fatson is. So,
When you were at St. Mary's, was it hard to get in here? Was it hard to become a student?
oh, was there a waiting list?
Yeah.
No, not when I came. And then it didn't cost any. You had to buy books, that was it. There was no tuition.
Wow. So how'd they decide who could come? First come, first served?
Well, they had, when the classes started getting too big, I think in 1939, they added on to the school. And then started having 2 classes. And then by the time our children left, you really had to be in line, like you said, because then it was getting up to where you almost needed 3, I think, for each grade. And you did have to get over here and make sure you got signed up. And that.
What's the neatest thing that ever happened to you here at this school as a kid?
You know, I had one thing that really was neat with the Scouts. I had a picture in there of the Eucharistic Congress they had in Cleveland, 1935. And that Eucharistic Congress was for people from all over the world, I guess. But anyhow, the end of it was a Mass at night in the Cleveland Stadium. And it filled the whole stadium and the field. And I forget the number. I know it was over 100,000 people there. And we were there with the Boy Scouts in a procession. And I guess that was it.
How old were you were you in St. Mary's when you got your first kiss?
When I what?
When you got kissed by a girl for the first time?
Spin the milk bottle. Do you know, maybe in the 6th or 7th grade, I'm not sure.
Is that right? Wow. And that was a classmate, you think?
No, I think a neighbor.
What would a Father Galena have said? What would he have said if he knew you were playing spin the bottle in the 7th grade?
I don't think he'd worry about that.
He wasn't worried about that.
No. You know, one time he was at a wedding reception we were at for somebody, and somebody asked him if he wanted to have a drink, and he said, "No, I don't have much time." And he said, "If I'm going to drink, I don't want to just have one."
I guess he wasn't much of a drinker, huh?
No, I don't think. No.
How do you think Father Galena stacks up against the modern priests that you've known?
Well, I really think that if he would have tried, that he could have been a bishop, and I forget the whole history about, when he moved in, where was pastor then was sick, and I can't remember how old Father Galena was, but that pastor stuck around for several months, and then Father Galena took everything over, and that was quite a job. At that time, we had, I think we had 11 or 12 nuns. There was the ones in school, and then a music teacher, and one that cooked, and so that was, besides the masses and everything, that was all the school people worked for him, and then, well, he didn't have many in the office, but he really had a lot of work to do.
Why do you suppose the nuns left here? Did they just decide to pay teachers, or?
Let's just wait for that train, if you don't mind.
Okay, there's a train coming, we gotta wait for that.
Oh, they were getting older, and maybe they were sort of grouchy, but there was
We're recording again.
Okay, now the sisters kept strict discipline in these classes, though.
right. Yeah, I had, I think the second grade sister and the principal were the ones I was afraid of, but the others, without hollering all the time and everything, really kept things in line. I guess we just knew we had to behave. So.
What'd you think of the educational quality of St. Mary's School?
Well, I think, when we went to Harvey, I think you could tell that we were a little bit ahead of the students from the public schools. Of course, one thing that happened to me when I went to Harvey, nobody pushed me like the nuns did, so I took it easy.
Yeah.
One thing happened that was funny with the nuns, the music teacher. My brother Joe and I were taking piano lessons together. And one day when we were over there, it was in the convent, and we came out, and Joe looked at me and he said, "Well, we quit." And I didn't know what happened, but I didn't ask him. Joe was a lot bigger than I was, and but later my sister said that the teacher in there bawled him out because his hands weren't clean, and so then after we get out, he just told me we quit, and that was it.
That ended your music career.
Yeah. And then everybody else in the family, I think, played. Two of my brothers played pretty well, and we had a piano at home, and the one actually played part-time in a band. He lived down near Akron, and then he even ended up playing like dinner music in some big restaurants down there, and we go to visit him, he'll still get on the piano and start playing.
And he was taught by the nuns here at St. Mary's.
Pardon?
Taught by nuns here at St. Mary's?
Yeah, the nuns, and then he took from, I think it was a Mr. Hurley after that. But then when he was in high school, he went 2 years at Latin, and then he came back and finished at Harvey. But at Harvey, they started a Dixieland band, and so that kept him going on it, you know. And so.
Did you go to Mass every day before class?
No.
No?
No.
Did you have devotionals then?
Have what?
Did you have a devotional?
No,
at the end of the day?
we prayed in the classroom, but we didn't have Mass. Like now they're having Mass every Tuesday. And they were already doing that at St. Gabe's, I think. I think on Wednesday they always have a Mass at St. Gabe's.
So how, now Father Galena would sit with you when you had your report card, and he would comment on your grades?
He didn't say too much. Like I say, he might just say, I think you can do better. You know, I think that's what he usually told me.
Did he, what did he think about your religion grade?
I don't know if he split them up any or not. You know, one of our sons went to seminary for a while, and they got report cards, and when he got one back, my wife looked at it for deportment. It said B, and she said, well, how come you got a B in that? And he said, well, they know you get away with some stuff.
Now, how often, now, other than on report card day, did you run into Father Galena very often?
Sometimes I'd see him out around the back. He had a dog, and there used to be a back porch on the priest house, and sometimes he'd be out around there. But I think he really spent a lot of time in there working on the books. And
so he was the sole administrator and head priest and everything, huh?
right. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Let's see, we have some questions here. How were kids disciplined in the 30s?
Well, like I said before, I think that we knew we had to behave. I guess they started that right in the first grade, and so we had, when I was here, Father Dearden was here too, and Father Linnick. And Father Linnick spent a lot of time with us boys. He really liked sports, and he was a priest that I saw the most. You know, he would even take us into his folks' house in Cleveland to eat, and take us swimming, play basketball with us, and then he talked to us a lot about life. And I remember once he said that if you're picking a woman out to marry, he said, try to find somebody that reminds you of your mother. And I thought, well, I don't know if I really did that or not, but
Well, yeah, no wife would ever want to be thought of as your mom.
no.
Do you remember the movies, the old, I guess they were 1940s movies, Going My Way and Bells of St. Mary's?
Right.
Do you remember Edmund Fitzgerald, the old Irish priest?
Right. I did.
Did anybody in those movies remind you of anybody here in Painesville?
Well, yeah, Fitzgerald did, of Father Galena. You know, he was like him, sort of.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, you're not the first person who said that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Did Father Galena speak with any kind of an accent, or did he speak with good English diction?
It was good. Well, you know, he hear confessions in Italian, maybe Hungarian. And one thing, he had studied in Rome, but he pronounced Italian names like they did in Italy.
Is that right?
It was like, if we call people dolce, he would say dolce, or Chipone was Chiapone. That's the way they said it over. I guess that was the right way to say it. And, but like I say, I think that, I know he heard confessions in Italian, I think in Hungarian too.
Well, now O'Leary's an Irish name, isn't it?
Right, yep,
Did you have any problems with the Italians when they started coming to Painesville?
right, we did. Somebody brought that up a while ago, and some Italian people told us that the Irish didn't treat the Italians very well. And see, like my family came here in about 1849, and and then St. Mary's started in 1850, and it was mostly Irish. I think my dad said there were a few Germans. And then about 1900, Italian people came. And I think, well, I didn't tell any Italian people this, but I think the Irish were sort of afraid of them, because once when I said something about somebody said the Irish didn't treat them good, my dad said, well, we never saw a knife or a gun till they came here. You know, and that was the thing. And then, but I think that, see, when the Irish came here, they really had a hard time because they were first Catholics, you know, and then they probably had a harder time than the other nationalities.
It's a pretty rough bunch around here then, huh?
Yeah, so, yeah, Irish or Catholics need not apply. But I think everyone, it's like with the Mexican people now, there's some people who really don't like them. You know, we've really treated Mexican people well here, you know, and that, well, there's been, you probably read, they had some agents in looking for people, but that quieted down now. Actually, Father Stalla, who had been here, gave a quick course in Spanish. My wife and I took it. And so we learned a little Spanish, you know. And then, well, they teach English here, and they teach at the library. And so these Spanish-speaking people they can learn English, you know, if they want to. There's places. So, and I hope there's a lot of them taking it. And then we have a bilingual mass on Sunday. And I think that helps the Spanish-speaking people, because part of the mass is in English and part in Spanish. And the music is both ways. And
Now, masses were given in Latin when you were growing up, right?
right.
So it didn't matter what nationality you were if you didn't know Latin. But I wonder if the Spanish Mass causes problems here. Do you think some of the old timers are offended by Spanish?
Oh, some of them are, right. Well, the only mass that's all Spanish is like Sunday evening. But the bilingual one at the 12:30, the priest gives the homily in English and Spanish, and then some of the readings are done in either one or the other, and some of the music is either one, you know, and the Spanish music is nice. So.
If you were giving me a recommendation for my kids, would you recommend that I send my kids to St. Mary's School?
Yeah, I really would.
Why
Yeah.
is that?
Well, I think that, well, right now in Painesville, especially the middle school has been under academic watch. And you know that, you're not, you know, you probably won't get that good of an education there, you know. I mean, this is the best place in Painesville to go.
I've always thought that Painesville schools were better because St. Mary's was here. Because they can't sing too far or no one will go to them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Just go to St. Mary's.
Yeah.
I've always thought the prettiest girls went to St. Mary's. How about you?
Did what?
Prettiest girls.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They were.
Did you marry a Catholic girl?
Yes.
Did she go
Her
to St.
father wasn't Catholic, and she didn't go to St. Mary's. She started Andrews in 2 years, and then she went to State Street, and then Harvey. Yeah. So.
What was your maiden name?
My wife,
Yeah.
it was Walk Up, just like it sounds, W-A-L-K-U-P. And then her mother was Catholic. Her maiden name was von Bessler.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, German. Yeah. So.
But all your kids look Irish, so I guess that German blood didn't count for much.
I guess so. Yeah, our family was Irish all the way back. Like, you know, my mother's name was Cannon, and then my grandma was Gill, and great grandma was Sheehan, and so they were all Irish all the way. Yeah. So.
Okay, I think we got.
They asked me if I thought Painesville was a poor city, and it was sort of a hard question. I had to think a while, and then I finally said yes. And but then I told them afterward that I probably should have added about what goes on. Painesville City is the county seat of Lake County, and naturally the poorer people hang around. They're close to county services, and yesterday I worked at the soup kitchen. They have one at St. James on weekends and holidays. They started doing that because the Salvation Army just fed people during the week. But St. Mary's has been involved in it for quite a while, and different churches take turns. And we served 99 people yesterday. And they're not all homeless. But anyhow, since I started, I think when I first started there 10 years ago, we might have served 60 people, so it's been growing. So there are more people that need things. And we have the St. Vincent de Paul Society here too. And when Father Dirch was here about 11 years ago, Lou Fry came up to me and said, we gotta get the St. Vincent de Paul going again because there's a lot of people need clothes and things. And so we started that up again. And but there's always like furniture people need clothes, and there's some people are going to get their electricity shut off, or you know, they need helping out. So anyhow, there's a lot of people in Painesville that do need stuff like that, you know, so I never really, there's a lot of poor people, but I wouldn't want to call it a poor city. If something happens, that's the way it is if you're the county seat, you know, and you have all the stuff around. So that's all I wanted to add to what I said. So
Well, I'm glad you came back and said, was there anything else you wanted to tell? Any more stories you remembered?
no, not now.
Not now? Well, let us know. We'll always come back. And
Yeah, next year.
well, I'm glad you came back.
All right.